Then the acting executive director also give some indications on what I'm supposed to communicate to you. And then Dr. Tusu nailed it all. But nevertheless, I will try to walk you through the journey of the RCDF UCUSAF, which you have worked for the past 20 years in brief. For those who are not so much into this, I want to say that RCDF, we are transitioning from RCDF to UCUSAF, but the most important point, we don't want to lose what you have achieved as RCDF as we become UCUSAF. That's very, very important. Because we don't want, after 1 year, to be asked, what has UCUSAF done? Forgetting that actually UCUSAF is just a continuation of RCDF. We are sharpening the definition of our mandate, of course, expanding on our mandate a bit, and obviously sharpening the way we are operating. That is under the new regulation, the UCUSAF regulation 2019. But the core of it all is that UCUSAF is a continuation of RCDF. We have so far had 3 policy periods. The current policy period ending 30th June next year. So the journey which started, can we go on the presentation, please? Might go on the The journey which started 20 years back has seen us transition through 3 policy periods, and we are entering a 4th policy period starting next year. So today we are having a 2-in-1, rebranding RCDF to UCUSAF, at the same time soliciting your views on RCDF or UCUSAF 4, which will be beginning next year. So I will walk you through the journey, how we've been moving for the past 20 years or so, and where we are today. And as I conclude, I'll try to summarize on what we see, where we are going under the UCUSAF 4. Of course, you cannot solicit ideas when you have no ideas at all. That would be horrible. You must have some basics. People have to work, have to assist you to enhance, to scaffold the ideas you are having. Asking for ideas without having any idea about something would be really tempting people to divert you. We are happy to have our facilitator who is facilitating this process, my OB and my friend, Dr. Augustus Nwagaba, professor, is facilitating this process. And in a few moments, we'll be coming up really to take us through, to walk us through the process. I started with this presentation with a small video. This happened about 2 years back during the ID. You can see this young lady who was dreading to touch his see how intimidated the young lady, whom I think is about 5 years or 6, how intimidated she is to touch a screen. If you transpose this to what Dr. Tusu has just told us about his grandchildren of 4 years who can surf, who can now navigate the internet to get whatever they want, you really see the real problem we are facing, the gap we are having. Dr. Tusu and most grandchildren can surf the internet at the age of 4. Here we are still having this wonderful lady, very, very bright lady, is just fearing to touch the screen. That one explains what the gap is that we are still struggling with. UCUSAF ORASCF is established under the Uganda Communication Act of 2013, under Section 3 of the objectives of the Commission, where the Commission is obligated to establish and administer a fund for the development of rural communication and ICT in the country. Within that law, it's being amended, possibly some of those connotations like rural, possibly will lose them, because here they can be very, very confusing. But the law as it is, we are talking about the law as it is, rural representing unserved and underserved areas. So the point I'm trying to make here that UCUSAF is an establishment under the law. That's the Uganda Communication Commission 2013. Like has already been alluded to already, how do we get the funding? We get our funding through that levy of 2% of every telecom operator, 2% of their gross annual revenue. That revenue is collected and submitted to the fund. The law gives us we can charge up to 2.5% in consultation with the Minister of Finance. So you have some breathing space of 0.5%. But of course, telecom operators, don't worry that we are going to think about this increasing 0.5%, because also we are cognizant that when it comes to resource allocation, possibly the operators spend that money on our behalf, possibly more efficiently than we do. Who knows? And of course, nobody wants to suffocate the operators. You don't kill the chicken that lays the golden eggs, right? So we are still, although we have that breathing space, we are being given a buffet. We are not filling our place with breeze, because we don't want to suffocate the operators, but at the same time, they would see the growth in the turnovers of operators has seen the fund nearly doubling for the past 5 years. If it was not the taking away of the mobile money operations to the central bank, we'll be seeing it and another 2% annual gross revenue. And I think I want to thank the operators. I think I should make this statement as the manager of the fund, who have willingly, without any push, operators have willingly contributed into the fund. I think they deserve a clap. I know quite in a number of jurisdictions where getting this money is a hassle. But here in Uganda, for the past 12 years, I've been closely associated with the ICT sector. We have never had issues of operators not submitting the percentage as it is put in the law, in the regulations. So we thank you very much, the operators. Thank you very much for supporting the fund. And obviously, as you're going to see, we use this money, we push it back into the sector. Push it back into the sector. Actually, we push back whatever we get. We push back about 97% into the sector. We only use around 3 to 5% for administrative purposes. 95% is pushed back to support ICTs, and indirectly, of course, we know, as we support ICTs, again, this money comes back to cause the multiplier effect in the growth of the sector. We can go back a bit. Let's go back. Let's go back again. Yes, when you get the 2%, it is shared as is indicated in that pie chart. You've been told, and that's a fact, starting from 2016, the Public Finance Act was amended. This is when you amend a statute can amend another statute. The Parliamentary Act can amend another act. So the Minister of Finance people, they are very smart. They didn't amend the UCC Act. They amended their own act, the Public Finance Act. And they put a provision that whatever we collect, 50% has to go back to the consolidated fund. Like ED put it, and rightly so, this was to assist in funding ICT issues across the government and other issues across the government. So we remain with 50%, but of course you know that the ICT sector cannot operate as a standalone. Policy formulation is very, very, very important. And all of us know that the Minister of ICT is a new guy on the block. He's one of the newest ministers, I think, in the country. Created in 2006. We are pleased to have the legacy and the PS Emeritus Minister of ICT, Dr. Pat Samanya, who now happens to be my board member here. So when you are doing ministry, you always have financing issues. So we identified that gap of policy formulation. The ministry didn't have enough resources, and as a regulator and as a fund, you only move at a rate and the speed at which the ministry can afford to formulate policies that can make you move. Without a policy environment, definitely you'll be a sitting duck. So we also decided that a portion of it, a humble, about 8%, sometimes I even be lower than this, should go back to the ministry to assist in financing them, to enable them to do policy issues at the ministry. So, in a nutshell, we remain with about 42% to do the interventions which I'll be sharing with you. But before we go there, I want to share you with the basis of a universal access fund. Obviously, this is an analytical framework which shows which tries to define the two gaps that are there always in the ICT environment. the so-called market efficiency gap, and the access gap. So always a universal access fund like ours will always try. Oh, sorry. Where's the highlighter? Yeah. Sorry. Peter, can you come and... So the Universal Access Fund endeavors to cover that gap, the so-called access gap. There are always two gaps in the market. The market efficiency gap, usually that one can be covered by some regulatory tweaks, some market reorientations from the operator and the regulator. That gap can easily be covered. Like recently, I think you have heard of the new licensing regime, where now we require telcos to design their networks according to coverage of geographical coverage, as opposed to population coverage. That is a regulatory tweak, which is going to see us covering a bigger section of that market efficiency gap through just a regulatory tweak. But the access gap, because of the access gap, you see that poverty on the x-axis as a dummy variable for affordability, and geographical isolation as also a dummy variable for cost to the operators. So as geographical isolation increases and affordability and poverty increases, there's that gap which can't be covered by the regulatory tweak because the costs are so high, whilst affordability is so low. So commercial operators cannot make money, even in the near foreseeable future. Say 4 years, 3 years, they can't make money. When actually you want everybody to access ICTs, like you say, nobody this time around when it comes to ICTs, we are saying nobody should be left behind. No solo Ghanaian, like water for all by 2000, when actually very, very few people, I think, managed to get water by 2000. With ICTs, we don't want those slogans. We want real accessibility. When we say everybody, because with the ICTs, it's life and death. Most services, if not all, will be carried on a certain ICT platform. Already it is happening. So leaving anybody behind would mean leaving them behind forever. So that gap, the real access gap, has to be covered by someone. When we look at the new licensing regime now, I think that's 10% when it comes to connectivity. The 10%. After the telecoms have covered the 90% geographic coverage, who is going to cover the 10%? And 10% is quite big. So there must be an intervention to cover those. But of course, as you have heard, we no longer look at connectivity as the only aspect of universality. There are a lot of demand issues also which have to be included. You've had what the acting ED have been telling us about the UN look at connectivity, and some, quite a number of them, look at demand side of access. So that's the real gap that we are looking at. Of course, to put it in perspective, if we are to benchmark the UN universality issues, just indicating some of them, you can start to fathom the kind of gap we are facing. I'll give you one example of education, ICT in education. Because I think if anybody asks me, what has been the major achievement of UCUSAF RCDF? Without a blink, I'll say our intervention in education has been phenomenal. There's no doubt about that. It has been phenomenal. But imagine, much as I'm talking of the phenomenal intervention in education, we have 8,000 secondary schools. 8,000 secondary schools. With about 1,700 government schools. The rest are private schools, of course. But when we say the UN Universality Index doesn't categorize between, doesn't segregate between private and government-aided schools. 8,000 secondary schools. We have covered about 1,300. That's the phenomenal intervention I'm talking about. So the gap there, only that, the gap there, it's more than 6,000 schools, possibly, which don't have any kind of ICT intervention. I know now the Ministry of Education is doing great work. Every project now they have managed to get. I've seen an ICT component in that project, but we still have problems with the private schools. And you know that in secondary education, most of the students are in private schools, as opposed to primary schools. In primary schools, most children are in government-aided schools. But when it comes to secondary schools, we now increased the transition rate, which is, I think, around 50% from primary to secondary. Most of the students are in private schools. And these have intervened. 6,000 schools, possibly maybe private schools, maybe 2,000, maybe 1,000, have a semblance of a computer lab. So there you have about 5,000 schools with the children who are 15 years and above in there who have never touched a computer. When it comes to primary schools, 15,000 primary schools. 15,000 primary schools. I think as UCUSAF, I think we have done, as a pilot, we've done about 7, which we call public access centers. As public access, only 7 schools out of 15,000 primary schools. And we have heard from our keynote address, from TUSU, that really ICT skills have to be commenced on during the nursery level. But 15,000 primary schools, possibly more than 10,000 of these don't have a semblance of a computer lab. Only that gives you how big the gap is. I was trying to look at numbers, giving our average cost of a lab. Looking at that gap alone, you need close to 1 trillion Uganda shillings to cover that gap alone. And that's primary and secondary. If you're to offer, without talking of connectivity, and now another problem has come in, another problem challenge, we no longer talk about connectivity only, but meaningful, meaningful connectivity. Not the 256 kbps which we used to give using VSAT. Meaningful connectivity. So the gap is really big. I just wanted to give this slide just to indicate to you how big the problem is. When they say that everybody 15 years and above should have a gadget, usually when we talk about that, people say, but we have about 28 million connections in Uganda. About 28 now? 25, 28. But I will just ask one question. I'll start with myself, then I'll ask you. I have about 7 SIM cards on me every time, every day. About SIM cards. You know, by computer, by phone, vehicle, about 7. So the 28 million connections, when converted into individuals 15 years and above, the 22 million who are 15 years and above, who have a phone, and now we are not only talking about a phone. Professor Tusa has told us, and rightly so, it should be a smartphone, because here they can do anything. To some of us here, it's just, I don't even know what to call it. They put it like using a straw to take porridge. It can be very, very challenging. It just gives you the basics of the basic. So the gap is too big, we are trying to measure. The resources we are putting to these gaps are too little compared to the gap we are trying to cure. Okay, we are given these statistics. We can continue. So, as I told you, we've moved through 3 policy periods. RCDF1 policy, emphasis was put on the infrastructure. When I talk of infrastructure here, we're talking about voice. Like my predecessor said, the former fund manager, in RCDF1, mainly we're emphasizing voice, because the second national operator had areas where we were not supposed to go, according to the license. So the RCDF had to go there. Of course, sensitization. In RCDF Policy 2, we expanded on our achievements in 1, expanding on the scope of the infrastructure. RCDF 1, you remember the public performance. I think everybody remember the public performance. We had a collaboration with the MTN, where the fund did close to 4,000 of these. Nearly every sub-county, I think, had an access. That's what your access. At least in every sub-county, there was an access where to make a call. Of course, right now, when you go there, some of them you can't even locate them. So did we waste that money? The answer, no. They did what they did at the time, and they were disrupted by newer technologies. For us, we achieved what we are supposed to achieve. I think that's what people say. You spend money, but where the public perform? In technology, really a very, very dynamic environment, you don't expect to see some of those loose infrastructures after 15 years, continuously people where they, but they do, they gave the service like they were supposed to give that service around that time. They were disrupted. Now, nobody makes, very few people make a call on the public perform. Actually, I saw it in Budo, King's College in Budo. Last week when I visited my son there, they have a public perform near the office there. It was looked like a museum piece. I had to move out of the vehicle to look at it, because I also don't know exactly how it looked like. I had to admire it and the technology. I don't know even the engineer will tell us the technology. So the upper technology can read the lower technology. So they're still, but nowhere you find those perform. But what I'm sure of that, possibly the people who are having the 28 million connected people in the country now we're talking about, possibly quite a number of them must have made their first call on those public perform. So they recruited a lot of customers for you, telecoms. So that was a very big achievement. So in RCDF2, we went into internet points of presence. That's when we had started talking about internet. Every district headquarter, especially those rural districts, the 79, the fund put there an internet point of presence. That's when we started on content, and of course we expanded. We started in a very robust way the computer to schools program, and we continue. In RCDF 3, which is ending next year in June, we put emphasis on those three: broadband connectivity and access, content mediation, and research and advocacy. And I'll be indicating to you that all the projects we have been doing have been falling into those three categories. All those projects were done by the fund. Nobody now talks of the analog to digital migration. It was a very, very big hot issue in 2015. We are faced with a deadline. There was a switch off, an international switch off date. Countries had to migrate. And this migration had a lot of advantages because I think some spectrum had to be harvested out of that migration. The fund came in handy to do this in Uganda. And they say when nobody is playing your music, you play it yourself. I've been telling people, even in international fora, that we did it at the lowest cost, I think, compared to all other countries in the world. I will put there a star. I haven't made some good research on that, but the little experience I have and what I know, at least the country that's around us, I know the cost which they used to do it. We did it at less than 15 million US dollars. I know I mentioned one country. Our neighbors in the DRC, they did it at, I think, $160 million. Other countries on the range of $100 million. We did it at $15 million. Our approach was the least cost approach, and 100%. It was financed 100%. Okay. Some good percentage, because it's not only infrastructure. It had some other aspects. But the infrastructure side was funded by the fund, the 18 sites from the country. So wherever UBC had an analog footprint, we put the infrastructure that could migrate them from analog to digital. And most of these sites are still working 10 years down the road. Of course, technology, I think, will disrupt them, but they serve their purpose. And they were there. Labs, at one time, like the ED said, we are saying we had reached 90% of government-aided schools. But of course, when policy changes, now every sub-county must have a secondary school. Now we can talk of 80%. But we have done. And because of that, ICT is now an examinable subject at A-level. Obviously, we have challenges there, challenges of curriculum. We recognize these. These are issues which we have to look at when we go into UCUSAF 4. When you look at the curriculum, ICT curriculum at UO and A-level, I want to use the word because I know the media, that's what we pick from all what we say. They will pick that table says the curriculum is ashaming, but I haven't said it. What we are teaching at O-level and A-level should be taught by primary 3. It should be taught by primary 3. By the time we go to O-level, people should be introduced to some advanced ICTs. Yeah. And the basic raw material for that is there. When you look at the kind of mathematics we studied by senior 2, by senior 4, the kind of physics we studied by senior 4, here we can far back be into coding. People should be introduced to coding by S1, by primary 7, by the way. That's when they grow into the profession and become amazing coders. By the time they go to the university, they will be amazing innovators. So those are the things now we have to look at. But it was good for a start. You see, when you're starting from zero, you can't compare it with any number above it. Yeah, zero is zero. 1 is far much better than a 0. But of course, TUSA has told us we must think big. We must think big. GSM sites, internet to schools, it has been a journey. We started with VSAT, 256 KBS. VSAT had its own challenges in terms of connectivity, but it served the purpose. But of course, sustainability was another very big challenge. Paying for the bandwidth. Most schools, they stopped getting internet as soon as the fund walked away, the schools couldn't afford. So now we have redesigned that. Maybe in UCUSAF 4, we are going even to look at it from another angle. The way we have redesigned it now, at least we provide a minimum of MBS. Of course, it is still little, but it's far much better than 256 MBS. Possibly, Professor, in UCUSAF 4, we should talk of 10 and above. And the problem of sustainability, we are also working around it. We are now saying yes, it's not adequate to give internet, to spend all that money, and people can't pay for bandwidth even for 1 month. You spend a lot of money in connecting them, but they can't even pay bandwidth for 1 month. So what we do now, when we go into a school, and here I want to thank RENU, Research for Education Network Uganda. You hear? These are the opportunities which we get to thank people. Yes, we give them a hand clap. They gave us very amazing rates which are cheaper than the cheapest to connect the schools. So they said, what do? We don't spend a lot of money on connectivity, then people can't pay for bandwidth. So we decided, let's put in more money. So when we go to school, we pay for bandwidth for 1 year, 100%. So at least for 1 year, we are sure the connectivity we have enabled in a school will be sustained. For purposes of sustainability, because we don't have all the resources, the second year, we start testing the waters. We only pay 70%. The schools have to pay 30% now. The experience you are getting, because this is the second year, we are going into this the second year we have entered into. What we are seeing from our monitoring report, about 50% of the schools, I think, are able to pay the 30%, but still, 50% can't pay the 30%. It's a very big challenge. So that means they are going to be switched off. But I think RENU have been kind because of the COVID period. There was a time when we were not using the bandwidth. They haven't switched off any of the schools, I think. Yeah, but that means probably 50% of the schools now, even with 30%, will be switched off. So in the third year, we pay 50, the school has to pay 50%, then we walk away. I think that's good enough. That's good enough to enhance sustainability. And then to enhance sustainability, we are introducing ICT clubs in schools. So that the ownership of these labs are in the hands of the students. We know all of you had clubs in the schools. You were a member of a certain club, Red Cross Club, Geography Club, Wildlife Club. These clubs are self-sustaining. They have a way they mobilize their own resources. We believe when you have these ICT clubs in schools, they will be able to take on some of the challenges you are facing. Sometimes the challenges are not so costly, but you can be amazed. You reach a school, the computer lab is off just because a cable snapped. Just because a cable snapped, the computer lab is off for a year. And here you can't blame the head teacher because they don't have a budget line for ICT. Maybe I'm recently, but I don't think they don't have that budget line. They haven't got that budget line. So we are trying to work around those challenges. Internet cafes, like all of you, we did some, but I don't think if I talked about internet cafes, my board will hit me on the head. these days. We no longer talk about this, but we did them. We did quite a number of these. Let's see. Okay, you can move to another. Go to another slide. So in UCUSAF 3, we've done quite a number of things. We'll be having a project exit report at the end of it all. We had a midterm review some 2 years back. We have entered into new areas like SME, collaboration. I have issues with this. What I know is that we have trained more than 5,000 businesses have been trained. We've now separated digital literacy for women and for the general public because we found out that whenever we partake digital literacy, we'll be having about 90% men and only 10% women in rural area. Then we knew there was a problem because all of us know that our population is 50-50. So when you are partaking in an activity and you see 90% men, 10% women, you know, because we could do digital literacy at a sub-county school, at a secondary school. Women moving, having their day, 5 days off, their homes, studying, because we give exposure of about 40 hours. Our curriculum for the community ICT training, about 40 hours. And women won't have that time. We all know the challenges our sisters face, especially in rural areas. So we decided to have a separate program for them, which has flex time, where the providers go to where they are. They don't wait them at the sub-county. They go to where they are. They ask them the flexible time, how to do it. We have tried it for the first year, and we are getting amazing stories from this. Can we go on? A broadband infrastructure. These 450 labs, these are the ones we have done in the last 3 years. In the next 2 years, we'll do another 400 about. So by the end of the period, we'll have done about 500 labs. 500 labs. An average of about 100 labs per year. And like I told you, this time round, whatever lab we put up, we connect it to the internet. Whatever lab we put up, we connect it to the internet. With infrastructure, we started with the upgrading. This is when 3G was still a big issue, about 3 years back, 4 years back. So we upgraded 22 sites. But now we have gone big time into collaborating with tower companies and telcos to put up towers. We are doing 25 in the last financial budget. Then this year financial budget, we shall do start at 3. Next year we might go to 50. And that's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. I know what's happening around us in the East African region. Again, you'll find very few funds who have done this. Of course, Dr. Tusa said that we should not compare ourselves with others, but sometimes when you're running, even these good runners, you already see them looking above their shoulder to see where others are. Sometimes it can motivate you. It can motivate you to see where the next is. So we are going big time into this. We are providing more money into this. Why? Because, like I told you, when telcos invest and cover the 90%, the 10% is going to be so clear. Everybody will be able to see it. And everybody will be asking the fund, this is your space. You must feel it. So we are preparing ourselves resource-wise and to make sure that we go into it. And we want to go into it sustainably. We've made a lot of research on this. We know quite a number of universal access funds who've done towers which haven't been hooked on by the operators, which are becoming quite elephants. So the first thing we did was to develop a model which assists us to analyze very, very well each tower which we are going to do. We analyze it technically and economically and see how much money we need to put into it, when can it make money. By the time we go to the operator or the tower company, we actually have a lot of information on that particular place. And what we have done now is a very dynamic approach, especially where we deal with the tower companies. We give a subsidy to the tower company. In return, the tower company must assure us that it will allow the telcos to hook on this tower at lower rental rate. Because we know in their calculation of putting up a tower, they always look at the profitability, the commercial viability of the tower. And rental fees, I think, is one of the dynamic factors. So when the rental fees are lower, these towers become commercially viable in the near future. So we give them a subsidy. In return, they promise us a contractual promise, not just a loose promise, that we are going to reduce rental fees, say, from 2,300, say, to 1,500. Of course, costs keep on changing. Who knows, maybe in a few years, even rental fees will go down maybe $500. I don't know. But at least all the towers we are going to do, the rental fees are going to go down by more than 40%. There are no towers that we have given subsidies. As we move on, as we learn from what we are doing, we'll be maybe even force them to bring rental fees even lower. Because again, we'll be now going into areas which are not viable at all. Now, put there a tower is one thing, that's the passive infrastructure, but attracting telcos to bring their radios, they must be sure that they'll be making money. And you can't suffocate them with regulatory fix all the time. When they are covering the 90%, at the same time telling them to go to areas that they won't make money at all, you'll be killing the sector. So we are trying to get a win-win, middle of the road, to make sure that we put up the passive infrastructure, but at the same time, we incentivize these sites to be attractive to the telcos. And I think what we are getting from the tower companies we are collaborating with is promising. It's promising. Like the 22 towers we are doing, I think all of them already, we are told already the tower company, the operators are giving them business for all those towers. The 33 towers we are designing, I'm sure it will be the same. Because again, even on our side, we know that these towers can make some money in 4 years. We did a pilot project we are sort of building satellite communication in the country, in Uganda and in Toronto. The pilot ended, we learned a lot about satellite technology, using it to give connectivity. It's still a challenge, a very big challenge. That's the summary I can give. Still a big challenge. But so we documented all the lessons learned. Possibly in a few years again we shall make another try. Because technology, as time goes, the costs go down. Things we thought were not affordable, they start to become affordable. Still a challenge. That's the lesson we've learned from Rwanda and Toronto. We've gone big time in agriculture, ICT clubs for sustainability. We are also going big time there. We have public access centers. We've now gone into devices. Because this is another area. But because when you talk of broadband, whenever we talk about broadband, what comes to our mind is connectivity. But of course, broadband is a value chain. It's not only connectivity. You can have the connectivity in an area, but what about last inch connectivity, the devices. If you have 4G in an area and people don't have 4G enabled handsets, will they be able to enjoy the 4G? They can't. What if they don't have digital skills, basic digital skills and intermediate digital skills? Will they be able to enjoy the connectivity? What about if there is no relevant content? So the whole value chain moves from connectivity, appropriate content, devices, and digital skills. So we are going into devices. And here we are going to the poorest of the poor. We have so far piloted and extended the pilot. The lessons learned are very, very amazing and very, very encouraging. And we're giving it a try. And as I say, again, we are doing a service, but at the same time, we are doing concept of proof. We will be asking for a lot of collaboration into this because the problem is too big and too costly that the fund can't go on it alone. Of course, we know the interventions at the operator level, what we are doing in enabling affordability of devices, but the kind of people we are reaching out, commercial interventions, however much they are tweaked, they can't be able to reach those people. We are targeting areas where poverty levels are higher than 30%. You know, the poverty levels in the country now are average around 19%. I think it went up a bit, Professor, during COVID. 19.7 of it, 19.7. But we're looking for those areas which are 30%, real poor area. That's why you see we are doing a lot of work in Karamoja Islands, parts of Palisa, some parts of Kanungu, parts of Lisa, most northern Uganda there. We go to those people who never thought of even getting a phone. And we are doing it in a way that we don't want to involve ourselves in complication. Why did you choose this one and didn't choose this one? We go to a sub-county, we choose a village where we are sure there is connectivity. If there's no connectivity, we work with the telecom to make sure that there is connectivity, 3G, 4G. Then we give to everybody on that village. We give to everybody on that village. And we move on. And it's working. And we don't only give devices, but also give bandwidth for 6 months so that people can test. The lessons we are learning, after 6 months, we've seen more than 70% of our people who have given devices. The people who didn't know these devices, who have never touched them, they buy their own, they now buy their own data. But now, what will happen next is make sure that all this content we are doing on education, farming, SME, to be uploaded on these devices, that will be relevant content. Then even the appreciation will go up. This is big. We are going big into it. We have done 1,400. That's a pilot. We are doing another 2,000, 3,000. We're doing another 5,000. We are moving on, but we can't do them. We shall reach a time and say, we have done a concept of proof, we've documented the challenges and the successes. Can you take it up? Who knows? Maybe someone else can buy into this. Because if you are providing services online, sometimes it would be better to give your clients the tablets so that you can easily reach them out. They go wild. So we will have this a repository of all these success story and the challenges for anybody to come and say, yeah, if you want to give devices, here are the lessons which you have learned over a period of time. We may not solve the problem 100%, even 50%, because we don't have the resources. But at least we can assure you, we shall do a blueprint like we have done with the computers in the schools. Even private schools who intend to buy computers, they come to us and we will tell them, possibly you don't need the standalone computers if you don't have all the resources. The first problem you get will be power challenges, So that's the reason why we are using thin client. When we talk of 40 computers, in inverted commas, actually we are meaning 46. Maybe the servers are 5. Maybe we do 4 to 1 computer. Catalyzing, especially other patterns, supplement the education sector's facilities. Yeah, because when we started, you wouldn't hear anybody, even in the Ministry of Education, talking about ICTs. Today we are happy. When ICT is an examinable subject, every big project in the Ministry of Education has an ICT component now, which is very, very commendable. Private schools, they used to buy school buses before they would think of an ICT lab. I think that attitude is changing, because you see them applying for an ICT lab of 70 million, when they have just bought a school bus of 200 million. Some of them, they thought the school bus was more important than an ICT lab. But things are changing, the attitude is changing, and I think we've been at the forefront of this revolution in the education sector. Of course, every program always have challenges. We have had those challenges. Limited budget is already a challenge. I just indicated to you in my opening remarks how big the problem is and the little resources which we have. So, ladies and gentlemen, that has been the journey. We've tried our best. We believe in the RCDI books. You can imagine how brands can really be described on our brains. UCUSAF 4, we believe we must build on the successes, scale up the successes, of course, using appropriate approaches of the time, and at the same time try as much as we can to go into new areas. Of course, we can't put our eyes off the issue of infrastructure. Like I've told you, the 10% is going to become very, very glaring after the telecoms have covered their 90%. The 10% we have to keep our eyes on that all the time. And it also, of course, demands a lot of money, demands a lot of support. Issues of content, very, very, very important, and ICT appreciation. We have to keep our eyes on defining the gap. As technology evolves, the definition of the gap also evolves. So we have to continue doing a lot of research, collaborating with the research within the UCC, the academia, and other ICT knowledge experts to ensure that the way we define the gap resonates with the technology that is in usage and with the times. Otherwise, if you don't define the gap dynamically, you'll be left behind. Like the ED rightly put it, at one time we defined the gap in terms of voice. Today you can't define the ICT gap in terms of voice telephone. Everybody will think you are mad. We define the gap in terms of 3G. 3G, nobody wants to hear about 3G, it's now 4G. 5G is coming. I hear 6G is already in the labs. People are getting their hands off 5G. So you can imagine how the gap can be very, very dynamic, and how to keep our eyes and our ears to make sure that we define these gaps to fit into the real times. I thank you.